What's going on, everybody? I'm Average Joe and welcome to another Average video. Today's video we're going to be checking out BLUETTI's brand spanking new Apex 300. Full transparency, this is a sponsored video, and of course BLUETTI did send out the Apex 300 for us to check out. And another quick side note, this is actually the very first BLUETTI portable power station that we've had on this channel. Alrighty, with that out of the way, let's get to it. Alright, so BLUETTI has basically designed the Apex 300 more around kind of like power outages or disasters, stuff like that. Although you can use it for RVs, you know, camping and that type of stuff. So on my channel, I'm not too concerned with that stuff because I don't have an RV or a camper and I just never go camping. I'm more interested in having backup power whenever the grid goes down. Yes, I understand I already have a full off-grid system, but this is why we're testing this here to see if it's good enough for power outages. All right, this is actually going to be broken up into two different videos. So video one, the one you're watching now, it's going to be more about the specifications, features, stuff like that. We're going to power a variety of loads. And then in video two, we're going to put it to the real test, in my opinion, and we're going to do a simulated grid outage and basically power my entire house. All right, first thing is going to be all the accessories that you get. So first thing is going to be your standard AC charging cable, you know, the one that you plug it into the wall so you can charge it. Second thing you're going to get is your DC charging cable. This is basically for vehicle charging. So one end's got the cigarette lighter port and the other end's got an XT60. Third thing is going to be a little tiny ground screw, and we'll get to this in a little bit. Next thing is going to be your user manual in a few different languages, and just FYI, there is a lot of information in here, so if you do pick one of these up, you're definitely going to want to read through all this. Lots of useful information in here. And then the last thing is going to be your warranty card. All right, next thing we're going to do is go over all the specifications and features, take a closer look, and then we're going to get right to the testing. Alrighty, so like I said earlier, the Apex 300 is more designed around, you know, power outages and stuff like that. So the inverter that comes with this is actually a 120/240 split phase inverter, and it can output 3,840 watts. Next is going to be the battery capacity, and you're going to get 2,764.8 watt hours of lithium iron phosphate batteries inside. So those are like the two big ones. Next, what we'll do is we'll do a closer look and I'll explain things as we go. All right, first thing you're gonna get on the top left is your voltage selector switch. Like I said earlier, this is a 120/240 split phase output inverter, and you can select that at any time with a switch on the outside, which I actually prefer. You don't have to go inside an app and do anything crazy like that. You can just flip a switch, boom, you're done. Next button over is an eco button. If you have that enabled, it's basically trying to save you, battery power. Let's say you're running something, I'm just gonna say like a fan. You turn that fan off and you don't come over here to turn this off or anything like that. After a certain amount of time, it's gonna enable the eco mode and kind of go into battery saving mode, trying to save you as much power as it can. All right, next one over is gonna be your AC inverter on and off button. Self-explanatory. Obviously, right in the center is going to be your screen with all sorts of information on it. So starting on the left-hand side is going to be your DC input and output. Right in the center is going to be your battery percent state of charge, along with how much time you have remaining. Of course, those two numbers are going to change whenever you're powering something. And then on the right-hand side is going to be your AC input and output. And then all around the outer edge of the screen is going to be all sorts of little tiny icons, I guess, depending on what you're doing. Right over here, you can see we're connected with Wi-Fi, but you can also connect with Bluetooth if you like, or you don't have to connect to anything if you don't want to. Right down here on the bottom, you can see it says 120 volts. That's only because the voltage selector is on 120 volts. If we go ahead and select 240 volts, 240 volts appears. You get the idea. Off to the right of the screen is going to be your charging selector mode. You can see we have three different ones. We have silent, auto, and turbo mode. Silent is basically 500 watts, whether you're charging from AC, DC, or really any sort of charging. Auto mode is going to be whatever you have it selected inside the app. And then turbo mode, if you're charging from the wall only, that's basically going to be 1440 watts. If you're charging from solar, again, silent is 500 watts, standard is going to be 1440, and then turbo is going to be up to 2400 watts if that's how much you have connected. And then finally, this can also do AC and DC charging. Again, silent mode is going to be 500 watts, standard or auto mode is going to be whatever you have it set inside the app, and then turbo mode is 3840 watts. That's pretty quick. That's basically like a 1C rate. And then finally, your on and off button right here. All right, so as you can see, there are no DC outputs. There's no USB anything, no DC 5521, ports. There's no Anderson ports or anything like that. Like I said earlier, this is geared towards, emergency backup, basically AC power stuff. If you do need, a bunch of USB ports and 12-volt outlets and all that kind of stuff, they actually make a whole nother accessory that you can get for this. I guess I didn't really mention before that this whole system is basically kind of build it how you want. So they offer just a million different options so you can build it to suit your own needs. So if you do need that, there's a whole nother box that's got USB ports on it. It's got the cigarette lighter ports on it. It's got an Anderson port on it. And I think it's got some of the DC 5521 barrel ports on it. But if you need that, it is an option. So basically, like I said, there's no DC output at all, which I'm actually kind of fine with because, like I said, I'm interested in, battery backup, emergency power, stuff like that. What I would do personally for a minimum would be hook it up to my manual transfer switch over there, which runs just some critical circuits in my house. My refrigerator, my furnace, the TV room upstairs, and I think that's about it. That's kind of like my bare minimum, so I'm not worried about plugging in phones or anything to this because I can just plug those in upstairs. Alrighty, moving on. As you can see right on the front, there are 4 AC output ports. These are 120 volt, 20 amp outlets. They come in pairs and you're only gonna get 1920 watts out of each pair. Again, which I'm fine with because if I have this plugged into my manual transfer switch, I'm not worried about being plugged in down here. I'm upstairs, watching a movie. Moving on to the right-hand side, first thing we have on the top is gonna be a removable panel. This is gonna be your fan exhaust output. This is a removable panel just in case this thing gets all dusty and you got a bunch of hairballs and stuff stuck in there. So if you find there's not a lot of air movement coming through this thing, you can remove this and clean out any sort of dust that might be built up on there. Moving on, first thing we have over here is a grounding lug. Like I said before, it's gonna come with this little tiny screw right here. In the manual, there's a lot of good information. So on page, am I recording? Yes, I am. Page 30, at least in my manual, it shows you basically how and why you would want to use that. Basically, if you have an older home that only has a hot and a neutral and doesn't have the ground bare copper wire going to your outlets over here, that's basically what this is for. You can hook up your own ground wire, which is kind of nice, I guess. Next port over is going to be where you plug it into the wall to charge it. Next to that's going to be your 20 amp circuit breaker. On the bottom, we're going to have 3 different ports right here. First one on the left is going to be a 50 amp AC input and output port. Basically, you can charge and discharge from that port right there. Some of that's going to be EV charging, probably generator charging, stuff like that. You can charge and discharge from that port right there. Next one over is going to be your RV port, so a TT-30. That is a 120 volt, 30 amp outlet. True 30 amp, they say. We'll find out. And then finally on the right is going to be your L14-50. It is a 50 amp plug. You can't actually pull 50 amps from it because this actually won't do 50 amps. But yes, it is a 50 amp port, which I actually prefer because I actually have a 50 amp generator input port over there. So for me, it makes it easier to plug in to power my entire house. But anyway, that is a 120, 240 output port right there. And another quick note that I need to kind of step back for is the RV port. For the voltage selector switch on the front of the power station, if you have that set on 120 volts, that's how you're going to be able to get the full 30 amps out of it. If you have 240 volts selected, I don't think you're going to get the full 30 amps. And then here's some other trickery for you for the L14-50 port is if you have 120 volts selected, you're actually only going to get 120 volts out of both legs. So it's kind of like the RV port, but but a 50 amp port. So make sure you move the selector up front to 240 volts if you need 240 volts. Moving on to the back side, there is absolutely nothing other than the sticker with all the specifications. Finally, on the left-hand side of the unit is going to be your DC charging area. This is where you're going to hook up your car charger if you wanted to, charge while you're driving or whatever like that, or this is where you're also going to hook up your solar charging. Voltage range on these two ports right here are 12 to 60 volts. You heard me, 60 volts. That is the max. In my opinion, it is way too low, especially if you're trying to use this for emergency backups. 60 volts is really hard to work with. Basically, you have to get specific panels, or you just get some regular panels. They're typically 32 to 37 volts. You're gonna have to parallel a bunch of those together to get up to the 1200 watts, which I didn't mention. Each port is 1200 watts for a total of 2400 watts. You're gonna have to parallel a whole bunch of panels, in order to reach that. In my opinion, that could have been a lot better. Okay, now here's the other thing about this. Since this is kind of like a build to your own spec system, they do offer a whole nother accessory, and that's another box. I think it's called like the Solar 4K or something like that. Basically, it allows you to hook up a high voltage array. So if you do have a bigger high voltage array outside, you can use that. You just have to buy the accessory for that, which I, of course, don't have. And then finally, the last port is going to be your battery expansion port. And then obviously, if you couldn't tell, right above is an expansion battery. This is the B300K. It does come with one USB-A port, and you can get 12 watts out of that bad boy right there. Battery capacity is the exact same as the Apex 300. It is 2,764.8 watt hours. Alrighty, well that's pretty much all the specifications and features. Let's get to the testing. Alright, first thing we're going to do is check some of the output voltages. The reason I want to do that is because a lot of these will claim 120 volts, but they only put out like 110. And for me, that's kind of a big problem. Okay, so we'll do out here on the front first, we'll do 120, and we're doing 119.4 for this pair right over here. Probably can't see that, but it is 119.4. Alright, next thing I want to check is, since this is a 240 volt inverter, I want to see if we get 240 volts out of the two hots over here. Put you on 240 and you back on, and we do get 240 volts. So this is going to be L1, this is going to be L2. Let me turn this around to the side, and just FYI, whatever rubber they used on the bottom side is really grippy. Let me flip this back over to 120. We're going to check the RV port right here. Of course, it reads 119.4. Next, I want to see what the 50 amp port does. Out of L1, we get 119.3, and then out of 2, we also get 119.4, and we'll go across the two hots, which is nothing. All right, so what that means is if you only have this in the 120 volt setting, you're actually going to get 120 volts out of both of these. You're not going to get 240. So if you need 240 volts, make sure you have it selected on the front. And then for the 240, of course, 240 right there, 120 on that phase, 120 on that phase. All right, so that's going to be all of the AC output ports. All of them are showing correct voltages. It doesn't appear to be neutral ground bonded, which is good, because whenever you're powering, your house in a backup, stuff like that, your house is already going to have a neutral ground bond, which is exactly what you want. All right, next thing I want to do is make sure this ground lug right here is attached to the ground inside, which it is. That's good. Oh, this is really tough to move around on here. All right, the next one, I sometimes forget to check on other portable power stations, and I'm sorry for that. I will try to do it for every future portable power station review I do. So what I want to do is check and see if there is battery voltage coming out of the portable power station. I'm not going to tell you why, but if you know, you know. Of course, I don't know which is what. All right, looky looky, we get 53 volts coming right out of the portable power station. Nice. Okay, we'll plug that back in. Go back around to the front. All right, the next one, I don't really have a computer or anything like that over here to fully test that out, but we're gonna test the UPS feature. So these two ports right here have a 0 millisecond transfer switch. So what that means is it's always running off the battery and the inverter regardless of you have it plugged into the wall or not. And then the other two over here have a 20 millisecond transfer time. Basically, whenever you unplug it or lose power from the grid, it'll continue powering whatever you have plugged into it within 20 milliseconds. And we're going to test that, okay? So the light is just a visual indicator. Hopefully it works. All right, we'll go ahead and turn on the AC output. All right, we're going to go ahead and unplug it in 3, 2, 1. There was a little tiny blink there, which I'm surprised it actually blinked, but it did. Plug it in. All right, heard a little tiny click. I also have my little tiny O-scope plugged in so we can take a look at this as well. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna unplug it in 1, 2, 3. There was a little tiny blink. You do hear a click in there, but I'm pretty sure that's the click for this side over here. All right, so here's the O-scope connected up to the same outlet as the light, and we're gonna go ahead and unplug it in 3, 2, 1. Boom, there we go. I don't really see how that's a 0 transfer switch time, but there you go. We're gonna go ahead and plug it in. And I didn't really see anything. We just saw it kind of waver back and forth. Okay, I'm gonna do it one more time in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, plug it back in. All right, now we're plugged into the 20 millisecond side. We're gonna unplug it in 3, 2, 1. Boom, it basically did the exact same thing. I'm not sure how quickly that was. I'll have to review that after the video is in editing. But anyway, here we go, plugging it in. It seems about the same as the 20 millisecond side. All right, we're gonna test it one more time. Here we go. Boom, there you go. All right, well, I'm no washing machine repairman or anything like that, but those looked exactly the same to me. So I sent that clip over to BLUETTI just to ask them about it because, again, I didn't see a 0 millisecond transfer time out of the left side. And they said in order to get the 0 millisecond transfer time, I actually need to change the voltage selector over to the 240 volt option. So that's what we're going to do. All right, so I have everything plugged into the left side for the 0 millisecond transfer time. I also have the little tiny O-scope, so we'll do this at least twice so you can see that as well. Okay, we're gonna turn on the inverter. Light is on for visual pleasure, and here we go. It works. I feel like an idiot now. But in the manual, it doesn't tell me to actually do that. It doesn't say anything about that. Okay, let me plug it back in. I heard my click and nothing happened. Okay, I'll move the light over to this side. This side should still remain a 20 millisecond transfer time, so we'll do that. Yes, there was a little tiny blink. Okay, now I'll switch over to the O-scope so you can see each one. All right, first one's gonna be the 0 millisecond transfer speed. Here we go, in 3, 2, 1. Yes, this did not change one bit. Okay, let me plug it back in and we're gonna test it one more time in 3, 2, 1. Yes, absolutely fan-freaking-tastic. Okay, I'm gonna switch it over to the 20 millisecond transfer time just so you can see it. And I'll also plug in the O-scope over there as well. So now we're plugged into the 20 millisecond outlets. All right, here we go in 3, 2, 1. All right, we did see the light blink a little bit and we did see a little change here. We're gonna do it one more time in 3, 2, 1. There we go. I did see a little tiny blip right through here. I'm gonna have to review the video in editing to see what it actually was, but nice. Alrighty, that is fan-freaking-tastic that you do get a 0 millisecond transfer speed as long as you remember to put it in the 240 volt selection. Nice. Alrighty, next test is gonna be running a bunch of heaters and a heat gun to see if it blows up. Alright, so I got two 1500 watt heaters over here. One is plugged into each phase. And then I've got the heat gun plugged in right over here to the RV port. And we'll just see what happens. Alrighty, here we go. Heater number one, we're gonna go on high. 1340 50 watts. Let me set this one on high. We'll turn him on. 2,700 watts. Here goes the heat gun on high. 3,900 watts, which is a little over what it's rated for. We'll just see how long that goes. And also I have the O-scope hooked up. This is what the sine wave looks like when we are maxed out. Looks pretty good. Oh, actually I'm still plugged into the wall. Never mind, sorry about that. We're unplugged from the wall now. So actually we just jumped up to 4,300 watts. Okay, let me turn that one off. Wow, I was surprised we were pulling that much from my wall outlet. So right now we're drawing 2,900 watts. Let me turn this one back on to low. It's 3,600 watts. That's 43, that's too much. Let me back that one down. 41, go high and low. I'm just trying to find the right thing. Well, we'll do 4,360 watts and see how long that goes before it shuts off. Here is the O-scope sine wave if you want to see it. It actually looks pretty darn good. And actually there is a setting inside the app where you can hit the button, I forget what it's called, but it allows you to draw more power for resistive loads, just like we're doing right here. But still doing 4,350 watts. We just have the little icon down here letting us know that we're drawing too much power. The fans are blowing, but they're not blowing like crazy loud or anything like that. Okay, that setting I was talking about in the app is called power lifting. I could go ahead and hit it real quick and see what happens. Now it says we're only drawing 3,300 watts, so I think what happens on that is the voltage sags down on here. Let me check that to confirm. All right, so that is correct. We're only doing 103 volts. So if you're only doing resistive loads, you could do that, but if you're not, I wouldn't use power lifting settings. All right, there we go. Jump back up to 118 volts. Okay, well, I guess I will just let this sit like this for a couple of minutes and see what it does. Oh, there it goes. It finally shut off. Okay, I'll have to review the video footage to give you an actual timestamp for how long that lasted. But it did last a good amount of time. I would say at least 5 minutes. Okay, what we're gonna do next is we've got everything plugged into the RV port right here. We'll see what happens. So right now with the heat gun over here, we're doing 1,430 watts. First heater, 2,940 watts. Next heater. Okay, well we can definitely do 3,600 watts, no problem. I think honestly it's gonna be the exact same. I think it'll run full power, no problem. Alrighty, I can't get the right combination to get right at 3,800 watts with these heaters right here. I think it's gonna do the exact same thing. I think it's gonna run right at 3,800 watts until it shuts off, which we will test in a capacity test here in a little bit. I'm gonna do a 0.2C, which is roughly, if I just do the power station alone, that's like 520 watts. And if I add the expansion battery to it, we can raise it up to like 1,000 watts. And we'll do a capacity test that way. Once those are done, I'll recharge it, and then I'm also gonna do just full send 3,800 watts and see what happens. Alrighty, next test is gonna be the air compressor and the 10-inch sliding compound miter saw. This is basically a 14 amp compressor. It's 2 horsepower or 2.5 horsepower peak, and the 10-inch sliding compound miter saw is 15 amps. First thing we'll do is we'll try them both on the same leg, then we'll split it up, and then maybe we'll try it coming out of the RV port for the hell of it. Holy crap, that scared the crap out of me. So it does do the air compressor just fine. This shouldn't automatically turn on. I'm kind of scared now. And yes, we're inside my house. I'm not cutting wood or anything like that. It's just for the surge rating, okay? That's it. All right, here we go. All right, it does that just fine. Let's take a look at the O-scope. Okay, I'm gonna turn on the air compressor. Hopefully it doesn't vibrate off the table, but here we go. And now the saw. Alrighty, I don't even think I need to test it in any other port because you can use both of them on the same phase. That's fan-freaking-tastic. A lot of them can't even do these alone. Nice. Are you gonna help me in this test? I'm gonna need it. Alrighty, next test is gonna be AC charging, and then we're also gonna connect up DC charging. I'm just gonna use it through this power supply through here. We're just gonna go in through one of the XT60 ports. That's it. I don't have another power supply that I can plug into the other one. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug it into the wall right meow. I also have the app sitting right here, so if you wanna see that as well. All right, so on silent, it should be 500 watts or thereabouts, which we are. All right, and it also shows up right on here. Alrighty, that seems to work just fine. We will go to auto mode. I think that's gonna bring it up to like 1400 watts. Yes, 1448 watts. Next will be turbo mode, and I really don't think it makes a difference when we're plugged in through the regular AC charging cable. I think that's gonna be a big difference if you're using like the big 50 amp input and output port. But anyway, we'll try it out. Turbo mode, didn't change a thing. Plug in the solar panels right here. All right, we're gonna add some DC to it right meow. I've only got it set at 1 amp. I heard a little tiny click. Actually, you know what we're gonna do real quick? I'm gonna unplug it from the wall. Right now, we've got 47 watts of PV coming in. We're gonna go ahead and raise that up. Okay, so voltage, I have this set on, I think 56 volts. So right now we're putting in 53 volts, about 10 amps, and that spits out 524 watts at the moment. Up here it is at 535. Maybe the app just kind of lags behind. Yep, there it goes, 530. All right, it looks like we hit 558 watts up here. Yeah, that might be all we're gonna do. We'll just go ahead and bump it up to 20 amps because that's all this can do. It would be nice to get all the way to the 1200 watts, but I don't have enough power for that. I think we could get a little bit closer to 1100 watts, but I think the percent state of charge might have to be quite a bit lower. Yeah, I had it set on 15 amps and we're only putting in 12. Well, might as well just put it to 20 and see what happens. Yeah, it's going up a little bit. 750 watts, 770.
I'm pushing through on 775, 78. Dig it up, baby, grab it home.
All right, I don't know if we're actually gonna go above 840, and I don't really wanna sit here and wait. So what we're gonna do is put a load on it and see what happens. All right, here we go. So the most that I can get out of it at this current percent state of charge is around, I think it was, 885, 888, 892, spoke too soon, 900, 914, 930, 942, 950. Wow, I didn't think it was gonna go up that high. 990.
Come on, AJ.
999, 1004, 1050, 1080, 1087, 1089, 1090. Wonder if I raise the voltage on here to 60. 1091, 92. So now I don't think I'm gonna get much more than 1090, which isn't bad. All right, next I'll plug it into the wall. Here we go. So we have 1450 for AC and we got 1018 for DC. And at this current percent state of charge, 88%, it says it's gonna take 0.3 hours to fully charge or to top it off. All right, so I'm gonna let this charge back up so we can do our first capacity test. So while we wait for this to recharge so we can do our capacity test, I have one more thing to show you right over here. And that is the BLUETTI Hub A1. So what this is right here is basically like a transfer switch. You can actually pull off this cover right here and you can hardwire in the grid on this side, and then over here you can parallel up to 3 more Apex 300s. You get the cables right over here to plug them in. So these cables right here are going to plug into this end right here, and then you get 2 AC output ports right here. These are 120, 240, so you get a 30 amp, a 50 amp. Your 30 amp is your L1430, and then your 50 is the L14-50. So what this allows you to do is a few different things. You can have whole home battery backup, so you always have power whenever the power goes out. Second one would be if you're just trying to go off grid, you could hook this up to a sub panel or just other loads that you're trying to start your journey off grid. Or I guess technically you could hook it up to that same sub panel or your entire house, whichever way you want to do it, and you can do time of use and all of that kind of fun stuff with this right here. All right, so with this box right here, we're not actually going to be using that in this video. We're going to be using that in video 2 whenever we cut the breaker and do a simulated power outage and, you know, power my entire house. So if you want to see that, make sure you hit that subscribe button and come back. All right, let me charge this up and I'll be right back.
One pair of pants later.
Alrighty, fast forward a couple of days and I'm still wearing the same shirt. And I've done a couple of capacity tests, which I will go over real quick because I did all those off camera because they're boring. First capacity test is I did a 0.5C, which is around 520 watts. And I got 2.454 kilowatt hour, which is 88.75%. Now, that's not like amazing or anything like that, but it's not bad. It's better than some of the other portable power stations that I've tested. It's not the best out of the portable power stations that I've tested. It's just above average. Alrighty, after that one was done, I went ahead and recharged it and did another 0.2C capacity rate. However, this one had the battery expansion connected. So we raised it up to like a little over 1,000 watts and we got 4.831 kilowatt hour and the efficiency on that was 87.36. So just a smidge lower, and again, that could be any number of reasons, but it's basically the same. Then after that, I charged it up one more time and attempted to do a 0.2C rate again, just on the portable power station alone, but I didn't change the charger settings that I was using from the previous test, which was like around 1,000 watts, and we only got 2.268 kilowatt hour for 82.03% efficient. That's what we got. There you go. Charged it all back up once again, connected the expansion battery, and then did a full send capacity test. Full send all the way down to 0 just to see what would happen. Alrighty, apparently I forgot to hit the record button, but the next test, which is starting right now, is a full send capacity test. Basically, we're starting at 100% state of charge. We're gonna max out the inverter close to 3,840 watts. Like I said, as close to that as we can get. And we're gonna drain it all the way down to 0 if it'll let us. I have a voltmeter hooked up to this phase, and then I've got my little tiny O-scope hooked up to that phase so we can take a look at those. And then we're hooked up to the 240 volt outlet right here. It wraps around and goes through this meter right here. This is brand spanking new to me. I've never used it before. This is the very first time, so I'm not sure how accurate this is going to be, and I'm pretty sure it only measures one side of the phase, so it only shows 117 volts. Okay, right down here it does say we're pulling 1.84 kilowatt, and then the bottom line right here should be our capacity result in kilowatt hour. And then for our load, we're going through the EG4 charge inverter, and we're charging up my off-grid battery bank, and right now we're doing roughly 62 to 63 amps. All right, so up here on the meter, we're actually outputting 3,860 to 80 watts. We're just gonna full send it like this and see what happens. If we take a look at the voltmeter, we're still outputting 117.2 volts. And then here on the little tiny O-scope, here is the sine wave that's coming out of the other outlets or the other phase, and the sine wave looks fan-freaking-tastic. All right, next we'll take a sound reading, and keep in mind the charge inverter over there has some really loud fans, and it's actually way louder than the Apex 300. But here we go. Looks like anywhere from 50 to 52 decibels. All right, so we actually did it. Full send all the way down to 0% state of charge without an issue. Nice. The next thing I want to check real quick is see if the AC output turns back on whenever we plug it back into grid. Inside the app, you can actually do system switch recovery, and I do have that enabled inside the advanced settings inside the app. So what that would be useful for is the grid goes out and this continues powering whatever you have it being powered. Once the grid comes back, will this turn back on in that state? All right, so that's what we're gonna find out. All right, so here we go. All right, nothing has changed yet. And if we actually look at the app, we actually have the AC switch is still enabled. I'm not sure how long it takes for this to actually work. All right, so after I walked away, I just plugged in a light so I could see it from further away. As soon as I got to 5% state of charge, the AC output did turn back on. So if you're using this as a UPS or in an RV or whatever your use case is, the inverter is going to turn back on and continue powering your loads. Nice. If we take a look at the meter over here, we consumed 2.32 kilowatt hours, so we actually need to times that by 2, and we got a total of 4.64 kilowatt hour out of the power station. And then if we take a look at the boom shunt, now keep in mind this isn't going to be accurate at all because the shunt is after the charge inverter. It should actually be before the charge inverter, which that's where this comes in. But anyway, here we go. If we want to take a look at that, we actually charged my battery bank at 4.2 kilowatt hour. 4640 divided by 5529.6 times 100, we get an 83.91 efficiency rating. All right, and then if you want to take a look at the boom shunt, again, 4.2 kilowatt hour. So we do 4,200 divided by 5529.6 times 100. It's quite a bit lower at 75.95 efficient. All right, so quite a bit of loss there going through the charge inverter, but that's okay. It didn't cost me a dime. There you go, full send, absolutely zero problems. The only problems I had is I didn't have my microphone turned on the first time whenever I first started the test. My bad. And then I just went and redid it. And then after that, I wanted to do a really important test, which I haven't seen. I don't even know if I've seen it on really any other portable power station out there. And if it is, then I must have missed it. But if you're using this in an emergency situation or really any situation whatsoever, and you run it all the way down to 0, let's say you're on vacation and you have it plugged in as a UPS, to your refrigerator or something like that, okay? This is just an example, by the way. If you're gone and the power goes out and you have this hooked up to your refrigerator, and it drains all the way down to 0 and it shuts off, when the grid comes back on, will the AC also turn back on to continue powering your device or our fridge in this example? And yes, this will 100% do that as long as you enable it in the settings. The first time I tried it, I didn't know you needed to change it in the settings. But anyway, we got that figured out. But it 100% works, and that is fan-freaking-tastic. And then after it was all charged back up, I brought it over here and did the old parasite test, basically where you turn it on, not the expansion battery, just the portable power station all by itself. Turn on the 240 volt inverter and just let it sit there and see how long it drains over 12 hours. Alrighty, we did that and it dropped down to 93% state of charge, so it dropped 7% for 12 hours. So if you times that by 2, it's going to be 14% for 24 hours. That's what I got, which is basically all the tests that I have done thus far, and I don't think I'm going to do any more in this video, so we're gonna start wrapping it up, okay? Because I don't want this video to go on too long. I don't want to bore you for too much longer. So anyway, with all the testing that we have done, I would say this is actually done probably the best out of every portable power station that I have personally tested. And I'll tell you why in the pros and cons. But basically, in a nutshell, this has pretty much exceeded my expectations because basically every single test that we ran, it did it flawlessly, and it, in a sense, kind of like asked for more, if that makes sense. Anyway, let's go over my pros and cons list. Now, of course, these are my own personal pros and cons. If you saw or noticed any sort of pros and cons, during the video, make sure you put those down in the comment section so, everybody else can read those. I have my little handy dandy list here. So we will start with the pros first. And the first one for me is kind of big because, like I've already said, I'm real big into the emergency backup stuff and having power whenever the grid goes down. So this does 120, 240 split phase with the flip of an external button. You don't have to go into an app or anything crazy like that. You can just flip the switch, boom, and you're done. And on top of that this is one of the very few portable power stations that you can plug it into 120 right over there, and it will still spit out 240 volts AC. I don't know if I actually showed that during the video, but it does do that, and that is fan-freaking-tastic because, again, for emergency, type use, if your power goes out and you're running your critical loads off a portable power station and you start getting low, Let's say it's at nighttime, there's no sun, so of course there's no solar charging or anything like that. If you only have a 120 volt generator, you can plug it in, charge, and you can continue powering basically both sides of the 240 volt circuit. So if you have it hooked up to a sub panel or whatever like that, you can power both sides, or you still get 240 volts, which is fan-freaking-tastic. Number 2 on the list is the external voltage charging selector, silent, auto, and turbo. This sounds very first world of me, but I literally hate going inside of an app just to change the charge rate. I just want to be able to plug it in and do a slow charge if I want to, and this will allow me to do it right on the outside. If I need this to charge fast, again, I don't have to wait for an app to load and find it inside there, or or whatever. I can just flip the switch on the outside and move on about my business. Probably building something. Number 3 on the list is, I kind of like that this is like a bare bones, a bare bones portable power station. It doesn't come with a lot of stuff. That's also a con. But I like how you can kind of build it to your needs, or, build it on a budget type of thing. Here's my cat, he might help. And to be honest, at first I actually wasn't a fan of that, but now I get it, because you can't please everybody out there. So having it as kind of like a bare bones, and you just kind of pick and choose or order whatever you need, I like that, again, because you can't please everybody. Somebody's gonna want this and somebody's gonna want that, and vice versa. I get it now. That's why they built it, so you can kind of build it on a budget and build it how you want it. Number 4 is gonna be the inverter. Now I know it is kind of like a weird size. It's not quite 4,000 watts. It's not 3,500 or anything like that, but it works. It actually starts my air compressor and my saw both on the same pair of outlets. I didn't even test it, one on each side, because they both worked on the same pair. That is unheard of, especially on all the other portable power stations that I've tested. A lot of them just won't even do the saw all by itself. Number 5 on the list is gonna be the size. It's not too big, it's not too small. It's small enough to just kind of shove in the corner and leave it for a rainy day. Or if you're gonna use it every day, that's same thing. Just shove it in the corner. It's small enough, it's not going to take up a lot of room. You'll be good to go. Battery capacity isn't really a pro or con. It's not big, it's not small. Yeah. Number 7 on the list, which is technically number 6 because the battery capacity didn't count, is on the sides you have the removable covers over the fans. So if those get a bunch of cat hairballs in there, you can remove those and clean it out. I don't think there's too many portable power stations out there that you can do that. So that is kind of a nice feature. Number 7 on the list, or number 8, whatever it was, is going to be the manual. I know most manuals that come with portable power stations, they just give you some bare minimum and then they just kind of send you on your way. There's just all sorts of actual helpful information in here, and yeah, this is a big pro for me. And then number 8 or 9 or whatever number we're on is going to be the phone app. There is a lot of good features and useful things that you can do inside the app. For example, if you want to use the pro mode, you can change, there's other settings in there that you can change that I don't think you can change with a button combination on the outside, which actually brings up the next pro, which I forgot to write on my list, is if you're not an app person, you can actually change by holding down the eco and the AC inverter on button. If you hold those down for a couple of seconds, you can get into like the menu and you can change some settings in there. So if you're not an app person, you can still change some of those internal settings. All right, that's pretty much everything on the pros list. Let's move on to the cons. Now, some of these, they're not necessarily my cons, but they could be cons for other people. So number 1 is gonna be, it doesn't have any wheels or anything like that to move it around. It is kind of heavy to move around. I think the power station alone weighs around 88 pounds, and if you have an expansion battery, that is 66 pounds. So if you have trouble lifting things or carrying things, this could potentially be a problem for you, but it does have a carrying handle on each side, so you can do the 2-man lift. Next one isn't really a con for me, but could be for you. Again, it doesn't have any USB or 12 volt outlets or anything like that. So if you're kind of relying on this in an emergency and you're not hooked up to like a critical loads panel or anything like that, and you're kind of just congregating around this, you know, there's no USB for phone charging, etc. You would have to plug in the USB charger and waste an outlet that way. For me, like I said earlier, I don't really mind because I'm going to connect this up to my manual transfer switch over there. Minimum, again, for my critical circuits. I can just plug my phones and stuff in upstairs, but for you, that could be a con. Thank you, buddy. Thank you. Yes. Next one on the cons list is going to be your solar input voltage, a max of 60 volts. Now, yes, this is a con, but I also understand that that's why they made it like this, because you can use this, you know, in many different fashions, RV or home use, etc. Low voltage, I understand, because if you take it, you know, RVing, camping, stuff like that, typically you're going to have a low voltage solar panel, but if you're using it for home backup or home use, typically you're going to have a higher voltage array. To me, you know, paralleling a bunch of panels together just to get up to the 2400 watts, honestly, I'm just not going to do that. I understand, like I said earlier, you can't please everybody. I understand why they kind of made it this way, is so you can build it however you want. You can also get that 4K solar box or whatever it's called, so you can accept a higher voltage input for solar arrays. So yes, it's a con, but there's also a fix. Next one on the cons list is gonna be these ridiculous battery cables right here. I mean, there's a couple different things I can see pros and cons with this. Is if you're doing RVs, you know, camper, stuff like that, and you can't stack an expansion battery on top of it and still shove it in one of the cubbies, this will allow you to basically put an expansion battery over here and the power station over here. You know, I get that, but for home use, this is ridiculous. This makes it so you really can't shove it into the corner and be, you know, the small footprint that I mentioned earlier. So I'm not a fan of this cable one bit. However, and it looks like a really old brick phone. Hold the phone. What did you say? Can't hear you. Fire the nukes? I'm on it. So anyway, you can get a 90-degree battery cable right here. It looks like the really old brick phones, you know, especially the ones that you can get in your car. My parents had one back in like 1991, but that's what this looks like. It is kind of hilarious in my opinion, but it does serve a function. It allows you to do a really close connection, you know, right up to the batteries. That is an optional upgrade if you would like the 90-degree battery cable. So that's kind of like a pro and a con all in one. All right, and I think that's about it because I don't have all the other accessories that you can get. I don't have anything that you can plug into the input or output port, so I can't test that one. I don't have the 12 volt or USB accessory box, and again, I don't have the solar box or anything like that either. So I can't fully test this, but for the test that we have completed, I would say it's done fan-freaking-tastic. All right, well, I think that's gonna pretty much wrap it up for this video. Again, if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, I would love to see those down in the comment section. I do still read those and try to respond to every single one. And of course, if anybody's looking for the brand spanking new BLUETTI Apex 300, I will have those links down below. Alrighty, well, that's pretty much all I got. Don't forget to come back for video 2 where me and my cat use both of these to power my house in a grid outage. Right, buddy? That's right. Hey, bud. What are you up to? Coming up? Come on up. Come on. Come on up. There you go. What do you say, buddy? What do you think of the BLUETTI Apex 300? The 300. No comment? You want to jump over there? Go ahead. Give me your honest answer, okay?